everyone. Welcome back to Ask Amy. I have a question today from Virginie, who is asking a question about a question that I spoke to, I think a couple weeks ago now. She says last week, but that's based on when she sent the question. I think it's a couple weeks ago. And it was around decision making. It was someone had sent in a question about a huge decision that had to be made, and they were worried that they were so in their heads about it that they weren't going to be able to make the right decision in the right amount of time. And in speaking to that question, I said something along the lines of how choices and decisions aren't really made from our heads. They arise from this space beyond our mind, beyond our thinking mind. So with that setup, with that background, here's Virginie's question. She says, I was a little puzzled by your answer on the question from a couple weeks ago when you said we actually don't make decisions from our mind or thoughts, as life does not move from us but through us. We are always lived. So what I was speaking to is this idea, and again, just hold this loosely as kind of an illustration that life is always living us. As much as it feels like we go into our heads, and we do to some degree go in and think, here are the pros, here are the cons, which one should I choose? It feels like a very effortful process that we're very much in the middle of. And we can do that. That's great. But if you really look at it, even in doing the pros and cons, like what has something show up as a pro? What has something show up as a con? What has something show up at all as a factor to use at all? We're not we're not creating it at that level. We're responding to what shows up from within us from something so much bigger that we don't put there. So again, even when we're using our minds as a tool and we're thinking about things and remembering and factoring in and evaluating and all that good stuff, that's that has us feeling like we're using our minds as a tool, right? And to some degree, for sure we are. We have this computer in our head that can do all of those things pretty well. But I love looking at that bigger question. Well, what even allows for those options to show up in the first place? And really quickly you start to see, whoa, I'm doing far less than it looks like I am. I have far less say in this choice and decision than it may seem like I do. Okay, back to her question. So she says, yes, that perhaps we're not making the decisions as much as it feels like we are, and life is always living us, always moving through us. She says, then I also remember you saying in your free webinar series that when our life is made smaller and smaller from a ton of crippling thoughts about me, judgments, etc., our decisions are also impaired. So, for example, we shy away from a new job opportunity, or we refuse certain things because of what looks like risk. So our decisions are smaller and constricted. So absolutely, this is exactly what I mean, right? When we have a free and open mind, all kinds of stuff gets to move through. Again, we don't put it there. I mean, we're just responding to what's showing up and moving through us, right? But when our mind is open, we're not taking things so rigidly and tightly, and anything can get through, a lot more tends to get through. It's no different than like a garden hose, right? When your garden hose is all straightened out, free of kinks, the water gets to just rush through. Now the water's coming from another source. You're not making the water. The water's just rushing through, but it gets to rush through something that's open, unencumbered. And the same thing, again, it's just an illustration, but I see the same thing happening for us when we're just hanging out and relaxed and we're okay with anything. And we don't have an agenda. It doesn't need to be a certain way. Well, all kinds of possibilities arise. And then we get to kind of loosely feel them and let ourselves be pulled toward one or another, rather than being in this rigid place where if only certain things are okay. If just to make up an example, if this relationship you're in absolutely has to work, no doubts about it, like there's no other option, this relationship has to remain as it is now and it has to work. Well, man, You're closing in on what you're going to be able to see. Because as soon as a new thought shows up that says, hey, maybe it could change form, maybe it could look this way, maybe you could do that, that doesn't fit with what your mind is saying must be. It doesn't fit with your agenda, your mind's agenda. So, yeah, that's how things get really tight and small. And we, before long, don't even see or register certain things as possibilities. And that's when people start saying, oh, I don't have any new and fresh thought. I feel like I think the same handful of things over and over again. Well, that's not what life is wanting to give you. Life is wanting to give you the full on pressure of the hose, but you have a bunch of kinks. You're saying it has to go this way, and that pressure just can't get through. So I hope that makes sense just as an illustration. It's really big to see. So Virginie says, in that case, life does not move through us. It's restricted, isn't it? Yes and no. I mean, life is still moving through us. So anything you think, anything that occurs to you, you didn't make it happen. You didn't put it there. That is still life moving through, right? And yes, we can have a kink. We can hamper down around it and we can restrict it and limit it in a sense. I mean, we can for sure limit, we're not limiting life. Like life is way bigger than our thinking and our limits, but we can limit kind of what's available to us, what we're able to see. So again, in any problem, any decision, anything that's going on in life, there is infinite, endless ideas, possibilities, creative new thoughts. All of that is available to every one of us in every single moment. But when what we're staring at is this, and this says has to look this way, has to go that way, well, then we become blind to what's trying to come through. It's still trying to come through, and maybe it is still coming through. It's just an illustration. But when we're staring at this saying, you're right, I do have to stay in this relationship and we have to stay legally married or it's not going to be good, then so many other things that might be showing up, we just can't see or hear them because we're staring at this and trying to meet our agenda. Okay. So Virginie says, our decisions are made from a small mind, not from an expansive peace, as we would not want those decisions otherwise. So when we're caught up, do we make decisions from our mind? So I love what you're asking. I totally get what you're saying. And I think, again, this just there's not a right or wrong answer. And again, we don't have literally this in our heads. Our life isn't literally like a garden hose. We're just kind of using these metaphors and illustrations to kind of get a feel for how it works. So it's not that this is the right answer, Virginie, or anything like that. But I think just the little tweak is that no, it's never that when our mind is busy saying must be, can't happen, all of this. It's not that we give the decision to our mind to make, because our mind is still a tool. Our brain is still a tool. It's not the ultimate source. It's life moves through our brain and is filtered in certain directions. It moves through our mind and is filtered in certain directions that become what we experience. But I don't see it, again, just illustration. I don't see it as our mind or our brain being the source of all that. I see formless energy that is everything. All of life is the ultimate source. It moves through our physicalness, which our brain is just a physical piece of whatever it is, hunk of neurons and other stuff, right? It's a physical object. A physical object is not the source of brand new thought and creativity. It's again, this bigger life energy may move through that physical object and spit off in certain directions, but the ultimate source is so much bigger. So even when we're super caught up, even when we're like this saying it has to go this way and I need a decision by 3 o'clock today or else, we're just going to be staring at this in our tiny, tiny little limited pool of possibilities and thoughts and options. We're going to be staring at that so much so that it will feel like we're making a decision from a teeny tiny little kiddie pool when in truth there's an ocean, universes, multiverses of energy coming up trying to take shape as new thoughts and possibilities for us. We're in the kiddie pool saying it's gotta fit over here. it's going to feel that way, but that's still not us making a decision from our mind. All that is our mind coming in and putting a kink in the hose, hampering down around us and limiting what we're feeling and kind of letting move through us, what we're aware of, what we're open to. Think about things like like dogs and dolphins and animals that have a whole range of sounds that are available to them that aren't available to us. It's kind of like that. Like, just because my dog can hear a really high pitched sound from 3 miles away that I can't hear at all, doesn't mean the sound isn't there. It's just that my mind isn't designed to be able to hear a sound like that. And when we have a lot on our minds, it doesn't mean that so much creativity and possibility and freedom and new ideas aren't there. They're always there. Everything that's possible, everything that is always existing at once. It's just more about what we're tuned into and able to recognize and let in and have help us. And when our mind is busy, that's what it does. It just kind of shrinks the walls in around us. So what we see and feel just in that given moment tends to be a little more restricted. But still, the choices come from beyond. And the only reason I keep repeating that point is I just think it really does something in terms of the illustration. Because if we think that it's up to us, like our mind makes the decision, this tool, this computer tool in our heads makes the decision, we're just going to tune in to what it's saying so much more. Obviously, if we think this is the decision maker, we're going to be really tuned into what our mind is saying. And that's not good for making decisions. It's not good for seeing a ton of possibility. We know, I mean, we know scientifically, we know in so many different ways that our mind gives us a teeny tiny fraction of what's actually available. It makes stuff up. Our mind wants certainty. It wants a decision to be made. It has an agenda there. So it will go out of its way to pick a side, to convince you that one side's better than the other, to limit the information that it's showing you, truthfully, because it's just a machine. It only has so much energy. It has to be very efficient. So it filters out so much, and it limits, and it hands you like, here's your decision. Here are your 3 pros and your 2 cons. So you're going in this direction. And that's just never ever the big picture. So that's why I just think it's so helpful to be able to look beyond what our mind is telling us, because oh my gosh, it just opens up so much, so much. So I hope that helps a little bit, Virginie, and makes it a little bit more clear. Not that it's clear and not that it needs to be. And again, I'm in no way saying that literally our experience and our mind and all that work like a garden hose, but I just use these illustrations and these metaphors to kind of help everyone get a bit of a feel for how it works. And that's all we need. We don't need the details. We just need a bigger feel for the fact that there's something so much bigger moving through. And when we step out of the way a little bit, we see that. We see our possibilities expand, and everything gets bigger instead of smaller. So thank you so much for sending your question. Send your questions about anything, decision making, habits, anxiety, how we work, upcoming holidays. I've gotten a lot about those. Anything that's on your mind, relationship issues, insecurity, worry. I talk about it all from this understanding, and I love the variety of questions that come in. So send them to Ask Amy at thelittleschoolofbigchange.com. And meet me back here on Monday at 1 o'clock Eastern for the live response. Have a great week, everyone. I'll see you next time.